Hello guys, welcome back to another video for 3 courses from one of my favourite books of all time. This book is by Bruce Poole, a chef that you might not have heard of, but he does have a Michelin Star. He does have a restaurant in South London, which was actually the first restaurant I actually went to that was a Michelin Star restaurant. There's the man himself carving ham, looking very happy with himself, and why not? You would be, wouldn't you, carving something that special? Also, a bit of trivia, his restaurant used to be Marco Pierre White's old restaurant, the one that he trained such people as Gordon Ramsay, Stephen Terry. The restaurant was called Harveys back in the day. And this picture here is actually quite significant because that was the first course I had at Bruce's restaurant, a pork terrine I believe it was, with marinated prune in Armagnac. But the book is just so full of amazing things to cook. Things like this, the cod, is absolutely outstanding. This roast chicken is the best roast chicken you will ever eat, honestly. The book, I'll put a link in the description actually for the book on Amazon, so you can buy it if you want to. I highly recommend it, especially with Christmas coming up. This chocolate dessert as well was a dessert on the menu we had at the restaurant. Again, amazing way to finish a meal of that standard. It's more of like a relaxed restaurant though. It's not like a sort of pompous or stuffy. It's more of a bistro type of place. So on to what I was going to choose for the 3 courses. I went for the onion tart to begin with, which, as you can see in the description there, is one of Bruce's favourite recipes, favourite things to eat, top 10 of all time, which is saying something when you consider how many great things are in this book. There's also this for the main course, the duck breast with peas and girolles. Girolles were going to be replaced by shiitake mushrooms, but again, it's pretty much the same kind of essence of the dish. And then dessert, the dreaded tart tatin. Simple in appearance, but it requires a hell of a lot of skill to get it absolutely bang on. So I was really quite worried about that, if I'm honest. So I've only just realised that we're actually starting the meal with a tart and we're ending the meal with a tart as well. So that's kind of strange, but that means a lot of pastry and potentially a lot of punishment. This pastry is just a simple short crust pastry, just made of flour, butter, iced water and some salt. That's it, there's nothing else to it. It's quite simple. After a long period of chilling it, it was quite easy to roll out after you'd sort of worked it for a little while. As you can see, it's getting larger and larger because it needed to be in order to drape over the sides of the flan tin, which you'll see in just a moment. So getting the actual pastry into the tart shell is not actually that tricky. You just have to roll it around the rolling pin and then gently roll it across the top of the tart tin. Just being really careful not to tear it or to get one side sort of like shorter than the other, because that can, when the pastry shrinks, that can then give you a whole load of problems. As you can see here, a method to getting the tart flush to the edge of the tart ring is just to take a little bit of pastry off the edge and then just dab it around the sides. This little bit of pastry I'm actually going to keep as well, just in case of any breakages or cracks in the tart. You can just repair them at a later date and you won't have fillings seeping out everywhere. So that's quite a good tip really if you're going to do a blind bake pastry case like this. Now, as you can see, I'm lining the tart with some greaseproof paper and emptied my entire foreign money collection of coins into it. I looked around, I didn't have any baking beans. I did consider rice, but again, I didn't have that. But these worked a treat. If you are stuck for like a weight for pastry, definitely go for the old foreign money collection or copper coins. Just make sure you've got something like cling film that's obviously oven safe, or in this case greaseproof paper, just to set the shape and make sure the tart doesn't shrink back too much. These are onions for the tart filling, along with thyme and a shed load of butter. Literally, this was a whole block of butter for about, I think in total I used about 8 onions. And as you can see, they're just going to cook down really gradually. so they become really sweet, really rich, and it's going to make an amazing filling for the tart. For the rest of the tart filling, I've just got about 9 egg yolks in a bowl with double cream. Now Bruce wants to use about 750 mils of double cream in his tart, but his tart I believe had wider dimensions than my tart did. So his was about 31 centimeters, I think, from memory, and mine was only about 20. So I ended up using about probably 600 mils, or maybe just under that actually, probably about 400 mils of double cream, and then of course the onions added in, and then it's just a simple case of just whisking the filling together to combine. Very, very simple to make. I mean, the hardest bit really is the pastry, but as you can see, I had to blind bake it probably for about 20 minutes to get the tart looking golden brown, and then a further 20 minutes with the coins removed back into my money collection, all safe and sound, so I can use them again when I can finally travel again, when COVID finally comes to an end. It doesn't look it, but this bit was quite nerve-wracking because I had to fill the tart all the way to the top. Now the filling's quite runny, so you're sort of thinking at this point, if there are any cracks, or if there are any kind of little gaps in the pastry, you're going to see them now, because you're going to see all that white filling come trickling out. But luckily the tart held really, really well. And the other challenge as well was getting it in the oven, like actually taking it from the side here into the oven, because the oven's like lower down. It was really nerve-wracking, but I needn't have worried, because look at how it came out, golden brown, beautiful, and all it needed then was trimming down. As you can see, it looks even better now, like something out of a cake shop in France or something, or a bakery rather. Absolutely delighted with the pastry. The filling just looked perfect on the top, and to serve, it's a really simple case of just slicing off a piece, serving with a bit of salad. In my case, it was some lettuce that I've got growing in the garden, and then a simple vinaigrette, which was just mustard, olive oil, and a bit of red wine vinegar, just to finish the dish off. Such simple ingredients, I really didn't know how this tart was going to taste, but it was absolutely knockout. It was brilliant. Really, really sweet onions, kind of like a quiche in consistency, but just absolutely brilliant. You can keep it for the next day, which is even better. So here you can see I'm just roasting some shallots in a pan. This is for the main course, of course, the duck, which you can see here. I'm using Gressingham duck breasts, which are fantastic. They're pretty much the only duck breasts you can get in the supermarket. And the trick is to start these in a cold pan. So interestingly as well, you can see the shallots there just carrying on cooking. But interestingly, is with the duck, you cook it completely in the pan. Now I've always cooked it in the pan first and then in the oven to finish off, but Bruce doesn't do that. Bruce kind of does a different method. You'll see in a minute how this method works, and it's unbelievable, and it's probably something that I'm going to do now from now on, if I've got the time to do it, which I should have really, because it's only like 10 minutes worth of cooking time. But as you can see, the duck is basically being basted in its own fat, cooked over quite a sort of moderate heat, about a sort of medium to high, and you can see there the skin starting to crisp up a bit, and the skin at the end, wow. Like look at that, that's just incredible. You know, perfect crispy skin, a slight bit of cooking on the back of it, and then rest it for a long time. That's pretty much it. As you can see, the sauce here is coming together nicely. So we've got lardons in the pan, the shiitake mushrooms, also the petit pois peas. This then just gets cooked with a bit of chicken stock, some port as well that's been reduced down prior to adding the stock. Just a really simple sauce. There's nothing else to it really. It's a really simple main course to make, and to plate up it's even easier. It's kind of bistro style, so just the sauce on the bottom with all the peas and the garnish, the duck on the top, and then easily to finish off is just the shallot with the skin peeled off, by the way, just finished on top. Really nice looking dish. I'll let you enjoy the plating process. So again, flavour wise, this was just absolutely amazing. The duck was cooked perfectly pink. The peas and the sauce underneath were rich and delicious. Honestly, it's just one of those dishes I'd go back to time and time again, especially with the method of cooking the duck. So on to desserts. This is the apples, well these are the apples I should say, for the apple tart tatin. I used Cox apples, they're quite in season at the moment, and I've just basically peeled them, cored them, and then put them into some water that's got lemon juice in it. That's just to stop them going brown and horrible before they get caramelized. To caramelize the apples, it's kind of a strange way of doing it. I think it's a way I've not done before, where the butter and the sugar are in the pan raw. You don't cook them at all down to a caramel and then add the apples. This is just basically the disc of puff pastry that I needed to cover the base of the tart, or the top of the tart, depending how you look at it. Just using a dinner plate as a guide. That's just because I needed something that was really far wider than the pan that I'm using. It was really quite weird because the pan's 20 centimeters and this was about probably 30 to 35 centimeters, but you've got to compensate for that overhang. I haven't made that many tart tatins in my life, but this was starting to look like a really good professional job. As you can see, the apples get layered up in kind of like a circle in the pan, as tight as you can get them. Bruce actually uses about 8 to 10 apples. As you can see, I've only used 6 and I had a perfect amount, so I guess you could really pack them in, but 6 apples works fine in this case. As well, I guess you've got to take into account the dimensions of my pan. I think Bruce's might have a couple of centimeters on mine, but for a 20 centimeter pan, this worked absolutely perfectly. And then the tricky bit is getting the pastry over the top and off the greaseproof paper. And then I used a trick that I saw in, I think it was a Gordon Ramsay restaurant, where they put the tart tatin, they took the pastry under the tart tatin with the back of a teaspoon. It's a great tip and it really worked well in this instance. So now comes the process of caramelizing, and honestly this made a right mess, but then again Bruce in his book did say it was going to get a bit messy because all that butter and all that sugar it kind of melts together, and then there's obviously limited space in the pan, so it all kind of starts to spill over onto my induction. So I was constantly mopping it with a cloth because it was just like a pool of butter, but the smell coming off it was just incredible. And the moment of truth after baking is always the most daunting, but look what happens when I lift the pan up. I couldn't believe it. Like, it came out absolutely perfectly. The best tart tatin hands down that I've ever done, and probably will ever do. I couldn't have got it any better. Simple as that. It was just the perfect color, the perfect consistency, the perfect shape. Everything about it was just brilliant. And it's just, again, like the tart in the starter, the onion tart, just simply cut it into a wedge and then serve it with some vanilla ice cream. Absolutely amazing, and hands down the best tart tatin I've ever made, and like I say, probably will ever make in my life. All in all, this was probably my favourite 3 courses so far in the series. I know there's only been one video, but there's going to be loads more. So please subscribe to my channel if you're new, like the video, share it, and keep coming back for more. If it makes you hungry, which I hope it does, I'm delighted to keep making these videos. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.